Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1076A, and today's date is September 15th, 2016, and the title of the episode is, The Fed is Ready for the Collapse. We're going to see more QE, NIRP, and total control of the economy. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, today we can see the market has been pushed up. The high-frequency traders, the plunge protection team, working overtime to keep this market alive. It looks like they're suppressing gold once again. And there was a lot of bad news about the economy out there. Things really don't look up right now. But of course, the market rises on bad news because they're hoping the central banks will do more. And we can see right now, when we look at all the economic indicators, things are rapidly declining. And we can see out in the UK right now, retail sales out there, they have declined. And we see that volume of goods sold in stores and online fell 0.2%. Sales excluding auto and fuel declined by 0.3%. We see clothing and footwear dropped around 3.4%. Household goods slid about 5.3%. And when we look at this entire situation, we're starting to see a pattern throughout the world. We're starting to see that the economies are declining in the same sectors of where they're declining here in the United States. Or actually the opposite way. Around the world, they're declining and the United States is actually following, because we can see out throughout Europe and other places, the economies are much, much weaker than the United States. Because here in the United States, the Fed, the U.S. government, central bankers, they've been trying to keep the illusion alive that everything is fine. And what we're starting to see is a complete breakdown of the system. We see here in the United States, the initial jobless claims, they're completely distorted. And we can see right now, when we look at it, that initial jobless claims, they're at 42-year lows. Now, what's very interesting about this is that when we look at the Fed Labor Market Condition Index, it is completely opposite of the initial jobless claims, where that is rising and the initial jobless claims is falling. So, kind of contradicts itself here. Plus, we also have to remember back in 2013, because of budget constraints, the government removed that department that really looks at layoffs. They just got rid of it. But when we look at Challenger Gray and Christmas, which is a private firm that looks at layoffs, we can see layoffs are continually increasing. And the situation is getting worse and worse as time goes on. And we already know that CEO of major corporations are already talking about cutting their payrolls. We're seeing more manufacturing being offshored. It is leaving the United States. Ford Motor Company is shifting all small car production to Mexico. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to try to save money. And by shipping all these jobs overseas or to another country, we're destroying jobs here in America. We're destroying small businesses. And we're destroying our tax base. And we need to realize that the United States is losing its manufacturing edge. Actually, it really has lost it. It's really gone at this point. And what we're seeing right now is that not just Ford, but other manufacturers are also leaving the United States. Fiat Chrysler said earlier this year it will end production of all cars in the U.S. by the end of this year, as it discontinues production of the Dodge Dart and the Chrysler 200. We also see that General Motors, Honda, Hyundai, Nissan, Mazda, Toyota, Volkswagen have all announced plans to either expand existing plants or build new ones in Mexico. So what we're seeing right now is that the situation is getting worse. More people are going to be laid off. There are going to be less factories here in the United States. And when we look at this, we kind of understand and realize why wages are continually declining. Because we're at the end of the fiat or the fiat system. Now, many people pronounce it different ways. The correct pronunciation is fiat. Many people just say fiat. However you want to pronounce it. I like to say fiat. But when we look at this, we see the Census Bureau reported that there was a 5.2% jump in real household income. But when we look at the BLS, we see that the average weekly wages for the nation decreased by 0.5%. So when we look at this, we can see that wages are actually going down. They're not increasing. When we look at the Census Bureau, what they're doing is they're grouping together those wealthy and they're averaging it out and saying, hey, look, the wages are going up. And they can distort these statistical numbers. It's very easy to do. They do it with unemployment. They do it with GDP. They do it pretty much with everything. And what we see right now is that there's 164 countries who are experiencing weekly wages increasing, not decreasing, compared to the United States. And since wages are continually declining, since manufacturing is leaving the United States, since more and more people are losing their jobs, what do we see in retail? We see retail, and we discussed this early in the week that the retail report was going to be out, and it is awful. We're seeing that retail sales, well, they've dropped by 0.1%. They were expected to rise by 0.3%. So what we're seeing is retail sales, they're in a downward trajectory also. And when we look closely at this, we see that retail is continually declining. I mean, we look at furniture and home furnishings, it's negative 0.7. Electronics is down. We see building materials down negative 1.4%. We see health and personal care is down negative 0.1. We see clothing accessories, that is also down. Sporting goods down negative 1.4. And when we look at this, we can see that the retail sector is declining. And it makes complete sense, because what we're seeing right now is that people are being laid off, manufacturing is being shipped out of the country, and corporations, they're going to be laying off people. And these individuals have no place to get jobs. Sometimes they take 1, 2, 3 part-time jobs. Sometimes they can't even find a job. And this is why we see all this happening at once. We see business inventories. Well, they rose by 0.5% year on year, and business sales dropped by 0.8%. This is the 19th month in a row of sales decline and inventory buildups. And business inventory to sales remain in recession territory. The situation here that we're looking at is a complete implosion of the economy. Now, of course, the Fed, the U.S. government, the central banks around the world, they can tell us that the economy is doing well. They did this in 2008. They said there's no problems. AAA rating, subprime security, stock market's going up, housing can't decline, retail is good, unemployment's still very low. There's nothing to worry about. What are these people talking about? A recession or a stock market crash? It makes no sense. Well, aren't we seeing the same things now, but they're much worse? Because if you really look past the propaganda that they were putting out back in 2006, 2007, into 2008, you would have seen this, but this time it's much worse, which shows us we're headed into a major problem. We see the Empire Fed. Well, it magically rose, not really that high. It rose from negative 4.21 to negative 1.99, but it still missed expectations of a negative 1. And remember, these are all negative numbers. But when we look at all the other components, we see that they have completely declined in every area. New orders down to negative 7.45. Shipments, negative 9. Unfilled orders, negative 11. Inventory, negative 12. Number of employees, negative 14. Working hours, negative 11. I mean, it's all negative. Now, what we're seeing here is a complete implosion of the economy. We know that industrial production year on year is absolutely awful. We know that shipping around the world is terrible. The Baltic Dry Index is around 796 or so. And most shippers' break-even point is somewhere between 800 and 1,000. And we've been below this. So the situation here is getting worse and worse. Now, very interestingly, we've been talking about the central banks and how they want to control the economy. Now, people think they have control of the economy. No, they want full control of the economy. And what I see happening here is a multi-phase type of collapse. And I mentioned this many reports ago. Now, Bernanke is out there, and he is talking about negative rates when there is another recession, depression. He believes that we should go right to negative rates. Now, let's put this together. Yellen, the Fed, came out with a report saying that if there is another economic shock, they're going to create more currency, QE, 4 trillion, maybe even more. They're also talking about if we're in another recession, we're going to negative interest rates. Why are they talking about economic shock, recession, negative interest rates, bail-ins? What's the purpose of talking about all this when they're telling us we're in a recovery? Because this is showing us what they're about to do. We're about to have the first phase of the collapse. Now, I don't know the exact date and time, but we can see what they're trying to do is they're going to be bringing down the economy. Now, of course, they need an event, and this will be phase 1. Now, the first phase, you're going to see the stock market crash. Credit's going to freeze up. Yes, there'll be capital controls, there'll be bail-ins. And the U.S. government, the central bankers, they're going to step in. They're going to want more control of the economy. Of course, they're going to do QE, they're going to bring in negative interest rates, but they're going to want Congress to pass a lot more legislation so they can completely control the economy. Then they're going to boost the economy back up. How many months will this be before the economy is boosted to where they want it? Might be many, so it's going to be a very long period of where things don't look good. Phase 2, most likely we're going to see another event where they say, since we were struggling, the economy wasn't doing well, credit's frozen, there's a lot of poverty, people going hungry, countries took advantage, and they hit our entire system. And I believe all of this is going to play out probably within from the first phase to the second phase, probably within that year. Now, when will it start? I don't know exactly when, but we are going to go through this collapse. The central bankers are going to take control, and then they're going to bring us to war. And we can see right now, they're already giving us signs of this. They're already telling us what they're going to do. And this is why I've been telling everyone to get prepared for what is about to happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.